Voletta Wallace, the mother of Chris Wallace, aka the Notorious B.I.G, just passed away at 78. Voletta Wallace, or Miss Wallace, really came into the public view, unfortunately, after the murder of her son, Notorious B.I.G, in 1997. And I could tell you, as somebody who was a freshman in high school when Tupac and Biggie were murdered, I feel like Voletta Wallace and Afeni Shakur, Tupac's mother, both of them kind of became public figures in their own right, not through any ambitious move to become more visible. In fact, Voletta Wallace is a very private person, but because these were such high profile murders, and it's just always astounding when I think Notorious B.I.G was 24 years old when he died, 24 years old. It's just crazy that he has such an impact and still has such an impact when he really lived such a short life. But when he and several months prior, Tupac were murdered, Afeni Shakur and Voletta Wallace grieved in public, not literally. I mean, they obviously mourned privately, but we watched and witnessed them giving interviews in the years to follow, and having to show up at the funeral and having to demonstrate so much strength and grace through basically the biggest tragedy for them personally humanly possible. Miss Wallace went through this, and she gives such honest reflections of her son's life and where she kind of stood at the time when Biggie was trying to aspire to become a rapper. Like, she's very honest about how she felt about it, and she didn't really become an appreciator, a true appreciator of hip hop until after her son's murder. And even in more recent years, like, she was on The Breakfast Club with Charlamagne the God, DJ Envy, and at the time I think it was still Angela Yee. But she basically said, when asked the question, what would you do if Biggie was still alive, if your son was still alive? And she said, as only a Caribbean mother would, I would strangle him because of some of his associates. Some of his associates I still want to strangle. And that just kind of encapsulates how raw she keeps it and how honest she keeps it. Even when she's kind of speaking very sentimentally about her son, she won't shy away from giving you what she honestly feels and thinks. And she's from Jamaica. I mean, my mother and her whole side of the family, they're from Belize. So I am a son of a first generation American mother who is from Belize. Grew up there until around 20 years old. So I could definitely appreciate that type of honesty that Voletta Wallace gave throughout her life and through the few interviews that she did in the decades that followed Biggie's passing. It's crazy to think that Biggie died at 97. We're almost at the 30-year mark, 28 years ago. And man, it was just a spooky, just chilling time because Pac had died. He had been murdered that previous August of 96. Biggie died in 97. Life After Death drops literally 2 weeks after Biggie died. So it was weird. They were playing like, the singles and the videos already when he was still alive. Think like Hypnotize. That video was out, and, they were premiering, new songs that were on this upcoming album, like Notorious Thugs. Like, Bone Thugs and Harmony was my favorite group. And so hearing like Bone and Biggie on the radio, along with, Going Back to Cali and the other songs that they were playing before the release. Then Biggie gets murdered, and then a couple weeks later, his album drops. It was just a very surreal thing. And then we got like Mo Money, Mo Problems, and the emergence of Mace, and Puffy's Bad Boy transition from, being Biggie centric to the whole post Biggie run that Bad Boy would go on that features some of their most prominent success. Think Puff Daddy's No Way Out album or Mace's Harlem World. And Voletta Wallace, and let me know if you've heard differently, but I didn't really hear her mention Puff Daddy by name when she would kind of voice her dismay about some of the people who were around Biggie. But I felt like she always insinuated that she was not a big fan. I don't know if she explicitly went in and talked about him like that. I vaguely remember reading something about some commentary that she gave after that some of his indictments came down. But let me know if you could verify any of her commentary around Puff Daddy specifically. But yeah, she's also been like the head of Notorious B.I.G.'s Christopher Wallace estate, which involves charities and just like a lot of different things. And she had said that, you know, the one thing that Biggie liked about fame the most is that he was in a position to be able to help other people. So she has really been a steward of the Christopher Wallace estate. And he, you know, always made it known that he wanted his children, her grandchildren, to want for nothing. So at the time of his death, I think that his estate was worth around like 10 million, and it's run by like her, Biggie's spouse, Faith Evans, and I believe Biggie's merchandise manager. They're the ones who run the estate. And I think that it was around 10 million at the time of his death, and I think it's grown to like over 100 million. And from all reports, it's been handled with care. And that just kind of speaks once again to the type of person that Voletta Wallace was. And so, yeah, I feel like she's become like a dignitary in the culture because of what she represents, and kind of also giving a peek and some rationale into the more tender side of Biggie. You hear some of that through his music. I know it's a lot of hardcore stuff as well, but she was also, you know, one who talked about how sensitive Biggie was and how loving and caring and all these different things Biggie was like, and how great of a sense of humor Biggie had. She would always speak to those things, and she made it known, like, I don't see, when I think of my son, I never saw the Notorious B.I.G. regardless of what his reputation would grow to become. Yeah, she was a mother in the truest sense, and they had a super close relationship, and she's also spoke honestly about that, you know, throughout the years. So yeah, rest in peace, Voletta Wallace. Again, her son is one of the greatest rappers of all time, and again, he did it in such a short period of time. Like, he was only an active, like, pro level musician from what Ready to Die dropped in 94. I think he had Party and BS maybe in 93. So we're talking from 93. He died in 97. Only dropped 2 official albums. I know they dropped, you know, whatever they dropped. You know, they always do the posthumous stuff after an artist's death. And, you know, yes, there were a few tracks that I liked from Biggie's Born Again album, but sometimes I feel like I just wonder if the artists themselves would want some of that posthumous work put out. I get that it benefits a lot of people, including the family, you know, of the person, of the deceased, but it's just always weird. You get like random features that had like no place in the artist's actual authentic life and career. Like there were like a Cash Money feature with Juvenile, B.I.G, I think, and Lil Wayne on a Biggie track. And it's like, you know, they weren't even a thing. Cash Money wasn't even a thing, at least at the national level, when Biggie had passed away. So I always have mixed feelings when it comes to like posthumous projects, but Biggie only had 2 actual albums, and per song, Biggie's probably the most effective, one of the most effective artists ever. Like, you would have to, it's a short list because you'd have to talk about people with relatively small catalogs. So we're talking what, Notorious B.I.G, maybe Nirvana, Jimi Hendrix Experience, or Jimi Hendrix. Biggie is in this like group where, because the window of opportunity was so short, yet he's got several tracks that are still super impactful. You could be anywhere, and when the beat drops and his, you know, opening line starts, like, think about how many iconic openings to verses Biggie has. When the La La hits from, what was that, Going Back to Cali, Armed and Dangerous from Notorious Thugs, It Was All a Dream from Juicy, To All the Women in the Place with Style and Grace from Big Papa, Who the Hell Is This, Paging Me from, what was that, Warning, Never Been As Broke As Me, I Like That from Sky's the Limit, Sicker Than Your Average from Hypnotized. Like, think about how powerful that voice is per track, and think of, if you could think of another artist, let alone an MC or a hip hop artist, who is more effective per verse or per song given their career catalog. Biggie Smalls was super unique in that regard, and his work has aged so well. It's stood the test of time. Like, people like still gravitate towards it, they play it, they absorb it, they still like it as much as like the current stuff in a lot of cases. And that just kind of amplifies how tragic it was that Biggie Smalls was killed at 24 years old. But rest in peace, Voletta Wallace, again, passed away at 78 years old. She was always very loyal to her son, and she really represented him in as classy a manner as you can imagine. Again, it's a mix of strength and grace as far as I've observed when it comes to Voletta Wallace. So rest in peace, Miss Wallace. And let me know your thoughts on her passing, on her legacy, and if you were around and aware at the time of Biggie's career and his tragic murder. And please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you love hip hop like I do. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.